You really can't go wrong with a good 3D platformer. They've got running, jumping, fighting bad guys, collecting stuff, so we're going to talk about 5 platformers that are nostalgic but also just a really good time. And first up is a game called Bakeru. This game is set in a fairy tale version of Japan that's being overrun by corrupted spirits. But it just so happens that the main character, Bakeru, has a pair of drumsticks that can cleanse evil spirits. How convenient is that? So while this game has you running around areas, finding collectibles, finding secrets, you're going to find that the combat is actually the standout feature. Rather than just slamming the attack button so Bakeru does this, you actually control right and left independently. And by using certain patterns, you'll unlock different combos that do way more damage than just regular attacks. You can also charge the drumsticks for a big smash attack, you can parry, you can dodge. This game's combat was way more fleshed out than I was expecting. Usually a 3D platformer can get by perfectly fine with colorful characters, cool areas to explore and all that stuff, but Bakeru stood out. And you sort of have to get decent at the combat in this game because just button mashing isn't going to get you through. And I really appreciated how the hidden collectibles also teach you little tidbits about Japanese culture. Front to back, Bakeru is just a very charming video game. And while we're talking about cool stuff you can find in Japan, we have to talk about a game called Omochapon. You know those vending machines at the supermarket where you put some coins into it and you get back a capsule toy? Well, Japan does those really well, and they're called gacha machines over there. And in gacha machines, you're gonna get a random capsule toy, but those are way higher quality, and those are the toys you play as in Omochapon. Each of these toys brings a unique ability to the table with the quest of escaping an after-hours mall. So if you've got to cover a large amount of distance, then you should equip the race car because that goes really fast. But if you've got to climb something like a ladder, then you should equip the robot because that can climb ladders. And as you navigate each area, you unlock a new toy to use. And what's cool about this is as you unlock new toys, then new areas get more and more complex. The game slowly ramps up in difficulty to match the new abilities that you've now unlocked. And each area makes good use of all the old abilities you have, so you're never really phasing out a toy. You're eventually going to be using all of them. And although the game is a bit linear, it is fun to explore areas after you get new toys with their new abilities. And if you're really good at exploring, you're going to find different colors for these toys. Every part of this game just oozes charm, but the aesthetic really shines. Although everything's very minimal, the reflections on the toys look oddly satisfying. And since you are really small, the game does scale really well. You feel tiny in this giant mall. And the sound effects in this game are incredible. When the toys move around or even when they break, it just sounds good. And as of this recording, Omochapon is a Switch exclusive, but maybe it'll make its way to Steam soon. And while we're talking about games where you're really small, let's talk about Tinykin. Tinykin are a bunch of little guys with special powers. Some of them can move big things around, while others just explode on impact. Playing as the astronaut Milodane, you discover Tinykin and you use them to try to move through a giant house. Or more likely, it's a regular sized house and you're just really small. Anyway, with the help of the Tinykin, Milodane is on a quest to solve puzzles and get himself home. Navigating areas and puzzle solving revolve around knowing which Tinykin to use in which situation. And sometimes you have to recruit a certain number of Tinykin to solve the puzzle at hand. And although this game is puzzle focused, the exploration and the movement is really snappy. But there's something special about Tinykin's setting that makes exploring this house a lot more fun. And as you solve more and more puzzles, it gets easier to move around these bigger areas and solve things that you couldn't solve prior. And while this next game has you playing as a regular-sized person, they do happen to be a time traveler. A Hat in Time is a much more standard 3D platformer than the other ones on this list, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. After her time machine breaks down, the main character has to run around different areas and collect its fuel to make it work again. Each main world is broken up into different acts, and within each of these acts, you're doing tasks that reward you with the fuel you need. And eventually, you'll unlock more areas by getting more fuel. But you're actually encouraged to explore as much as you can, because the more stuff you find, the more hats you can unlock. And each hat has its own ability, and while these abilities don't drastically change the game's gameplay, it does give you an edge. Just ways to make your life a little easier through this adventure. For example, I enjoy the hat that lets you sprint faster. Each world has its own specific theme. There's one world called Mafia Town, and there's another one that's like a movie set. But what is unique about this game compared to the others is that this one has co-op. So if you're looking for a solid 3D platformer that you can play alone or with your friends, then A Hat in Time will serve you really well.
Straighten your back, darling. You're actors, not janitors.
But if you're looking for a game that's the most 3D platformiest 3D platformer, then we gotta talk about New Super Lucky's Tale. When I first saw this game, I could have sworn it came out in 2005. It just has that aesthetic, the character design, the level design, everything about it just looks like it jumped out of that era. There are optional objectives, the main character's got a tail that he whacks enemies with, there are things to find in levels, there's secrets everywhere. This game is a love letter to the quintessential 3D platformer. But I really enjoyed the fact that this game doesn't just have 3D platforming in it. There are 2D platforming levels, and there are levels that are dedicated to just puzzle solving. It's not a ton of variety, but it was enough variety for me to be excited about levels that weren't the same as the one before it. And while this game isn't all that difficult, the optional challenges give you something to go for. And on top of all of that, each world has its own distinct flavor and theme. And with that being said, what is a dream 3D platformer that you would love to see come back? I know this is the nostalgia talking, but I love Jak and Daxter. Those games showed me how funny video games could really be. I don't know what it's gonna take for Naughty Dog to make a new Jak and Daxter game. I know they're being really careful with the IP and they wanna make sure the legacy stays good, but I mean, I think so many people would appreciate that game's return. We're getting new Ratchet and Clanks these days and his legacy's just fine, so why not? If you found this list helpful and you wanna see more like it, then make sure you like the video so I know that. And if you really like this video and you want to see more of this, then make sure you subscribe to my channel. We're always talking about video games here, and if that's the kind of thing you want to hear about, then we're gonna get along just fine. Anyway, thank you for letting me talk your ear off about nostalgic 3D platformers. I hope you enjoyed these games, and I will see you in the next video.